My heritage as a farm boy, or growing up in the generation of farmers, field is where you go out and do your work. I mean, it's a matter of you plow, you cultivate, you harrow, you cut, you harvest. And the painting now becomes the field on which I do my work. The relationship to the land, I would say, is one of the most important aspects of my growing up. The land really did have a meaning beyond just a place to make a livelihood. The landscape itself was just around me. I guess it took me a while to get used to it because it was just too perfect. I wanted to have more connection to the landscape, a close connection. Nature was this larger thing, and man was a very small, significant part of it. Earthliness and earth is part of my sensibility, and this is what prompted the move back to Lancaster County. And I was very much interested in Van Gogh at that time. I was reading his letters, which had just been published. I was very influenced by his marks. I started working more directly from nature again, and set up my easel in the countryside and painted the phenomena of nature, in which there were these sunrises and sunsets and bursts of colors. If you work within a narrow range of color or a narrow range of value, all you're doing is exploiting more nuances within that narrow range. I'm dealing instead with the possibilities that can occur within color. In other words, the fact that color can take a journey, the fact you can go from this point to that point is a sense of passage that occurs within the use of color as well. Passages in terms of space, or passages in terms of how you go over a landscape, or how you travel around a field of canvas. I was driving on a road where the field was just very brilliant in the sunlight. In a certain way I was looking at it, there were spots of dark, which was the head of the barley, which was seen in relationship to the blaze of light. So the question is, how do you create that bleached quality that you get from too much sunlight and still have the darkness? So this floating and this kind of shimmer or kind of vibration was what interested me. The squares started occurring in the late 60s, and the more deliberate choice to use squares was probably about 72. Now, about this time I had also been seeing painters like Agnes Martin. Robert Ryman talks about the square sometimes a little off, maybe a fraction of an inch off one direction or another. The square represented me something neutral. It also opposed the direct reference to landscape. It permitted me to be involved with vertical and horizontal at the same time. I wanted to get rid of horizons. In spite of the fact that I have always adhered to the landscape idea, there have been times in which I have rebelled against people thinking of it in the landscape terms. I don't particularly want to have my paintings called landscape. Essentially, they are not that. The paintings themselves are meant to be seen in their own terms, and if someone has to look at them in terms of my interpretation of landscape, they're kind of missing something. Paintings are more autobiographical in that sense that they are documenting not only thoughts I have in my own autobiography, it's as though they are autobiographical in the sense that they're investigating themselves. But the landscape has to be in there, I guess. Jackson Pollock says, "Do you paint nature?" And he said, "No, I am nature." I learned to think about the landscape as being a message bearer. There's something about the nature of forces greater than I am. I was fortunate to be a participant in these forces, to observe them, to be an activator. In a sense, I think my painting is simply about that. An activator and a carrier of these forces that have been going all around me. When I go to the country, I take a deep breath, and it's like it all rolls over me again. Just to be very simple about it is just something that still sustains me.